All right, a little talk about the midterms. The midterms are concerning. The Republicans have a razor's edge in the House, and if they lose the House, they Trump will be impeached like 30 minutes later because the House votes to impeach and investigate, and then the Senate votes on conviction. The Senate acts like a jury to vote on conviction. But if the Democrats are in charge of the House, not only will they impeach, which who cares really, but then we'll have 2 years of nonstop investigations and headlines in the legacy media, and it'll just further slow down and obstruct the MAGA agenda. And if they instruct it enough, then in 2 years after that, they get to look back and say, hey, Trump promised you he would accomplish all these things for you, America. And look, he's gotten nothing done. He's a failure. Put us Democrats back in charge. And that's the end of the nation. The last time the Democrats were in charge, they were allowing tens of millions of third world migrants to flood our nation. Next time, it'll be hundreds of millions. And next time, they won't screw up like they did this time. Next time, they will snap their fingers and make every one of those hundreds of millions of third world invaders instant citizens, instant American citizens. Our nation will be lost. I know it's grim to contemplate, but those are the stakes we're fighting for. And Trump could lose. This guy says, oh, the Republicans are going to get crushed in the midterms. So he's not going to run for office this year, he says, because it's a bad year to run as a Republican because they're going to get crushed in the midterms. And my buddy Bill, shipwrecked crew, former federal prosecutor and defender of almost 100 of the January 6 protesters, legal defense, writes here, congressional elections come down to a binary choice in the weeks before the general election. He's disputing that the Republicans will get crushed in the midterms. Democrats in Congress currently enjoy a 26% approval rating and 67% disapproval amongst all voters. Polling today, when there's a general dissatisfaction about the direction of the country, doesn't tell you a thing about where the race will stand 11 months from now. I think that's true. For all the caterwauling and teeth gnashing and gaslighting coming from folks like you in the America First ranks, the Democrats have a virtual internal existential fight over the party falling into the abyss of socialism. That's still a dirty word with the U.S. electorate, but the Dems seem to be insisting on nominating more of them, socialists, in their primaries, like the AOC types. Let's see how their primary fights go and the kinds of candidates they send forward for the binary choice in November 2026. Elections are won, lost in the last 6 weeks before the election. When 20% of voters make up their minds, you can't predict what those decisions will be until you know the candidates and you know the conditions on key issues from July to October. And I'd say that's true. I agree with them. The trouble is the landscape for that battle is being defined right now. Rick Miller says in the midterms, typically the president's party loses House seats 93% of the time. Since World War II, the president's party loses at least one chamber, the House or the Senate, about 64% of the time. And those are all true statistics from the past. But Shipwreck Crew notes here, absolutely true, but when, this is not normal times, he's going to suggest, when has the opposition party so dramatically altered its political orientation over a 4 to 8 year period like the Democrat Party has since 2018? Hillary Rodham Clinton's folks had to cheat for her to beat Bernie in 2016. Bernie, a self-declared socialist. Then they had to run a dementia sufferer, Joe Autopen Dementia Biden. So the middle of the party didn't realize that the communists were actually in charge on the march inside the Democrat Party. How many issues advanced by the progressive socialist wing of the Democrat Party are on the losing side of all the 80-20 polling splits we're seeing today? The Democrats are going to run candidates in that 20% wing. The part of the Democrat Party that is not with the progressive socialists will see that the leadership of the party has left them behind when we see their candidate selection 7 to 9 months from now, and when we see who wins their primaries. He continues, the Dems won't be urging Trump voters to come back to the old Democrat Party led by Joe Biden and Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. They're all gone. All of them are familiar and comfy from their time during the Obama years, but they're all gone. The Dems are going to run alumni of the 2020 riots with all the social media that goes along with that. All the things they said on social media in the past, And I think he's right about that. But there is danger. There is danger here. What is the vulnerability on Trump on the midterms? And to me, um, and I have to believe Stephen Miller is keeping an eye on this. But to me, I see the White House talking about foreign policy stuff, like blowing up the drug boats and moving a bunch of the Navy off the coast of Venezuela. And I'm not trying to say those things are unimportant. I love it. I think it's fun. But dealing with Ukraine, 7 or 8 or 9 peace treaties, whatever the number is. But American elections are not won on foreign policy, and those are nice to have issues. American elections are won on American economics, how people feel about their current status and what their status is like to be in the foreseeable future, whether it's improving or degrading. And I see a vulnerability there for Trump. Of course, I've talked about it before, but let's talk about it again. A big part of it is all these layoffs, these tens of thousands of layoffs happening. And these jobs are not really disappearing. These jobs are being transitioned to non-Americans, to H-1Bs in the US and to overseas outsourcing internationally. UPS, 48,000 employees. Amazon, 30,000 employees. Intel, 24,000 employees. All down the list. These are all thousands and thousands of people. And these are all huge organizations. So sometimes you'll hear, well, Amazon, 30,000 people, that's only what I'll make up a number, 3%, 5% of their workforce. It's not that big a deal. I'm sorry, it's a big deal. 50,000, 30,000, 24,000 Americans lose their jobs. Here's the problem. That this has become a structural defect. This destruction of American jobs and handing them to third worlders has become a systemic defect in the American economy because the jobs are lost forever and there is no replacement jobs. So this isn't like these Americans are going to transition laterally to a similar job at another company. These jobs are lost forever. We all know people, American citizens, well-trained, well-educated, skilled at what they do. Let's say middle-level IT is a quintessential example. And they're 45. They're well-paid. They got a mortgage. They got kids in high school. They're going to have to start paying for college soon, and they get laid off, and they can never get a job again. They got laid off 10 years ago. I mean, I know people like this. They got laid off 10 years ago, and they've never been able to get employed in their profession again. How do you think those people view their current circumstances? I mean, people lose homes. They spend their kids' college funds. They spend down their retirement savings until they're completely out of money. I heard from one the other day, and he's like, used to make a good living, $250,000, $280,000 a year. It's a lot of money. Very nice house, standard of living. He lost his job a few years ago. He says he's got 3 months of money left. That's it. And he has no prospects for employing. He sent out thousands of communications, resumes and otherwise, for employment. There are no jobs for a 40-ish American trained in these fields. How do you think those people feel about their circumstances and whether things are likely to get better or worse for them? And they elected Trump to fix this. They weren't electing a Democrat to fix this. The Democrats were letting tens of millions of third worlders flood over our border. So they elected MAGA, Make America Great Again, America First, to fix this problem. And if they don't perceive, or let me rephrase that, if they perceive that Trump is not fixing this problem, I'm not saying they're going to vote for the Democrat presidential candidate, but I'm suggesting they just won't vote. They just won't show up. And that's how you lose elections. Your people just don't turn out. They just don't show up at the polls. And then the other guy wins with low numbers, but more than yours. They don't win. And so I think this really has to be fixed. And of course, I'm not the only person saying that, but this is what I see as the key vulnerability in the midterms. And I don't see Trump effectively addressing it. Now, I am seeing administration initiatives around the margins that should be helpful on these things. But I hear Trump talk far more about Venezuela and Ukraine than I hear him talk about this threat to the American middle class, this destruction, implosion of the American middle class. And not just the American middle class, not just the mid-level managers who lost their jobs years ago and can't get hired again, but thousands, tens of thousands of American college graduates who did all the right things, studied in the fields they were told to study in, got good grades, graduated. There are no jobs for them. They have the highest level of unemployment they've had in a generation. Are they going to vote for Trump? And now some of them, graduated a few years ago, and now they're in their 30s, and they're like, I'll never be able to have a house. I'll never be able to have a family. I'll never be able to have kids. And guess what? Then they don't have kids. And that just aggravates the population collapse that we're seeing among first world cultural Americans. Fugitive Caesar says here, the Trump administration needs to get on this because voters have been patient for 10 months. Businesses are purging American workers en masse. Big business is going to scream like stuck pigs when the pipeline of cheap foreign labor gets turned off, but it needs to be done. And he's responding to these numbers. And again, some people will say, hey, 48,000 at UPS, 30,000 on Amazon. As a proportion of their total employment, it's not that big a number. Listen, 30,000 Americans lost their jobs they can never get back. That may as well be a bomb dropped on a moderate-sized American city, as far as I'm concerned. That's an act of war. That's an act of war. The town I went to college in, Binghamton, New York, upstate New York, population about 50,000. Here, UPS is laying off 48,000 Americans, outsourcing those jobs. You may as well have dropped a nuclear bomb on Binghamton, New York, and killed everybody. Because absent a check on the third world invasion and the outsourcing, those people will never recover. They can't recover. There are no jobs for them. It's not that they're unwilling or incapable. And by the way, this notion that Americans are suddenly incapable is such nonsense. The academic performance of, now I have to clarify here, because we live in America, we live in a multi-demographic nation, and not all demographics perform at the same level. But the academic performance of white Americans hasn't changed in decades. School scores are going down, but it's not because of the white American students. And obviously, it's not because of the Asian American students. I think I have a graph on that in just a moment. Of course, I love this meme, right? The parent loves one child. Oh, I adore you, honey, while the other uncared for child, is that the middle child, is drowning in the pool. Fugitive Caesar, same guy, says Trump supporters are economically drowning at the moment. Legal migration needs to go to zero, and 10 million foreigners who are currently here on legal visas need to lose their jobs, lose their visas, be deported. Young Americans are radicalizing. There's not much time left to de-escalate. And if the right does not offer them a solution, the Mamdani socialist communist mantra is going to sound compelling. They want a house. They want a family. They want a life. And if the Republicans cannot credibly offer that to them, they'll take the not credible offer from the left. They will. They will. People who are drowning will grab onto whatever they think, correctly or incorrectly, will keep them afloat. And the young are particularly subject to making a poor choice because they haven't had the decades that I've had, that many of you have had, to see the degree to which socialism lies and is evil and has only harmful consequences over the long term, because young people haven't had a long term. This guy, James Fishback, is really interesting. He did a lot of work. He's a finance guy, but he did a lot of work on social media around the, I believe it was Letitia James, the mortgage fraud there. Very effective communication. He's very vocal about the need to limit legal as well as illegal immigration into the U.S. And he's running now for governor of Florida, running against Byron, what's his name? Byron Donalds. Byron Donalds is a black gentleman, Republican. I guess DeSantis must be term limited out. So they're running for governor of Florida. Byron Donalds, until very recently, has been very quiet about the whole immigration issue. The vibe I'm getting is that his sponsors, or corporate sponsors, are very much in favor of continuing H-1B or even ramping it up. So he doesn't want to speak against their interest. But now that James Fishback has entered the Florida governor's race and is talking very loudly about the H-1B problem, now Byron Donalds is beginning to say, yeah, maybe we should. It's just not credible. I just don't believe it when he says it. Now, I happen to be in Florida at the moment. I don't live in Florida. I won't be living in Florida anytime soon. We're moving from Colorado to Tennessee, not to Florida. But James Fishback is a guy worth keeping an eye on. And he writes here, if you want more H-1Bs, if you want Florida to look like Dubai or Singapore, if you want a place with no real identity or culture, if you want AI data centers on every corner and tap water your dog can't drink because it's been poisoned by the tech bros, then Byron Donalds, his opponent, is your candidate. I'm not. But if you want to defend the dignity of our neighbors, if you believe Florida is for Floridians, if you want great paying jobs for our recent high school and college grads, if you want to protect our natural environment the way Ron DeSantis did, if you want to keep Florida free from radical transgender ideology, DEI programs, Soros backed prosecutors, voter fraud, and the millions of illegals who poured in on Kamala Harris's watch, then vote for me, James Fishback, on August 18th. This must be the primary. Let's build on the 8 strong years of Governor DeSantis. Florida is our home. America is our birthright. And people like Byron Donalds have no business taking that from us. By the way, Trump has endorsed Byron Donalds. But I find this messaging from James Fishback to be far more compelling from a MAGA and America First perspective than anything I've heard from Byron Donalds.